You ever walk into a room and immediately feel like you're the punchline of a joke nobody told you? That's what it felt like that night. It was supposed to be casual. Amy had texted me earlier in the day. Michael's birthday thing at La Vida, rooftop bar near the office. Come by if you want. No smiley face, no, I miss you. No love you like she used to add without thinking. Just that cold, indifferent tone she'd adopted lately. Still, I told her I'd swing by. I had this gut feeling, not the good kind. The kind that crawls up your spine and settles behind your ribs like a warning. But I went anyway, hoping maybe I was just being paranoid. The bar was on the outskirts of Austin, trendy in that way that tries too hard to feel effortless. Edison bulbs hanging from beams, acoustic covers of 80s songs playing softly, overpriced cocktails with names like Whiskey Sunset and Lavender Cloud. I parked a block away and walked slowly, giving myself time to breathe. From the sidewalk, I could already see the rooftop flickering with soft lights. I climbed the stairs, passed through a pair of glass doors, and then I saw her. She was near the stage, standing with a group of people I vaguely recognized from office holiday parties. Her laughter cut through the noise, the kind of laugh that used to be mine. The one that made me fall for her in the first place. Spontaneous, unapologetic, real. Only now it was aimed at someone else. Michael. I'd seen him before. Head of her department. Polished, older, probably the type who'd corrected a waiter for mispronouncing Chianti at least once in his life. Trim beard, tailored suit, wedding ring long gone. A man who moved like he knew everyone in the room and assumed they all wanted to know him back. He leaned in close as she whispered something in his ear. She touched his arm, slow, deliberate. He grinned, wide and unashamed. Then, without hesitation, he rested a hand on her lower back. No resistance, no flinch, nothing. She just stood there with that same glassy smile. I froze, still halfway in the hallway, my body caught in limbo. I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't even know what I'd seen. Yet, maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was tired, overthinking. We'd had a weird week. Amy had been distracted, always claiming work was insane lately, back-to-back strategy meetings and off-site huddles, whatever that meant. I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to believe it. But watching her lean into that man like gravity pulled her there, it hit different, like watching someone else wear your clothes. Eventually, she saw me. Our eyes met across the room. She blinked once, like she was trying to remember my name. Then the smile returned, smaller this time, like someone pressed play on a video that had been paused. She excused herself from the circle and walked toward me, holding her champagne flute like a microphone. "Hey, you came," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I wasn't sure if you would. I texted you an hour ago saying I would, right? Sorry, it's been chaotic." I didn't respond. She glanced over her shoulder, back toward Michael. "Okay," I said finally. "So, what was that?" Her eyebrows lifted. "What do you mean? You and Michael. He had his hand on you like you two were." She cut me off with a scoff. "Seriously?" "Yeah, seriously." "Oh, come on," she said, laughing. Not in amusement, but like I was being ridiculous. "That's just how people are here. It's playful. God, if you worked with us for even a day, you'd get it." "I don't know, Amy. It didn't look playful." She leaned in and lowered her voice, as if we were co-conspirators. "Look, Michael flirts with everyone. It's like his whole personality. It doesn't mean anything. Did you tell him that when his hand was on your waist?" She pulled back, the fake smile slipping just a little. "You're being dramatic. You sure I'm not just noticing something you're trying to ignore?" That hit a nerve. Her face shifted barely, but enough. She looked away, scanned the room like she was hoping someone would pull her back into the party. "I don't want to do this here," she said, voice flat. "Then when? You've been gone emotionally for weeks. Amy, you get dressed up for strategy sessions now. You don't respond to my messages until hours later. You guard your phone like it's gold. I come here, and the first thing I see is you getting cozy with your boss." She exhaled sharply. "Wow. Yeah, wow. We stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then she pulled out the classic line, "You're reading into things." "No," I said, already feeling the heat drain from my face. "I'm just finally reading them right." She didn't argue. She didn't defend. She just shook her head like I was the one making a mess of everything. "Go home," she said. "We'll talk later." That was it. I didn't stay. I walked out the same way I came in. I remember sitting in the car for a long time, parked under a flickering streetlight, just gripping the steering wheel like I was afraid the whole world might fall apart if I let go. The champagne laughter still echoed in my ears, and my chest felt like it was being crushed from the inside. But worse than what I saw, worse than Michael's hand or Amy's smile, was the realization that she wasn't even trying to hide it. She knew I saw. She just didn't care. And that hurt more than anything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while the shadows shifted along the walls. I kept waiting for her to come home, to apologize, to explain, to do something. But when I heard the door creak open around 1:40 a.m., she didn't come to the bedroom. I heard her head straight to the guest room instead. Maybe that was her answer. The next morning I packed a bag. Nothing dramatic, no shouting, no slammed doors. I just folded up some clothes, took my laptop, my toothbrush, the photo of us from our trip to Banff, and walked out. No note, no goodbye, just silence. She texted me around noon. "Where are you?" I didn't respond, because honestly, I didn't know either. But wherever I was headed, it had to be somewhere she wasn't. Because standing in that bar, watching her laugh like I didn't exist, that was the moment I realized something I should have seen long ago. I wasn't part of her world anymore. I was just an outsider watching my own life from the hallway. After I left that night, I checked into a cheap motel off the freeway, one of those places that still gives you a plastic keycard and a paper receipt. I didn't even unpack, just collapsed on the bed, fully dressed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, trying to make sense of what the hell had just happened. And somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m., when sleep still wouldn't come, something clicked. A thought I'd shoved aside for months finally pushed its way to the front. Things hadn't been right for a while. I just didn't want to admit it. You know how people talk about red flags? In my case, they weren't even subtle. They were neon signs, lit up in bold letters, waving right in front of my face. But I was too busy believing in the version of Amy I had built in my head. The one who'd once fallen asleep on my shoulder during late-night movies, who used to send me dumb memes while I was at work, who cried the day we signed the lease on our first apartment because it finally felt like home. But that version had slowly vanished. And now, lying alone in that motel bed, I started replaying the moments I had ignored, the ones I had excused, brushed off, or chalked up to stress. Like how she stopped answering my calls after 6 p.m. First, it was work. Back-to-back meetings, she'd say, sighing like the entire world needed her input. Then it became after-work drinks. Then it was strategy dinners. Always vague, always last minute, always ending with her stumbling in well past midnight, smelling like expensive perfume and someone else's cologne. And I never pushed. I trusted her. Or maybe I didn't want to know what I'd find if I did. I remembered this one Thursday, about 3 weeks before the rooftop party. I'd gotten home a little early and decided to surprise her with dinner. She texted she'd be late. Working with Michael on a big pitch. Okay, fine. I waited, ate alone, washed the dishes. Around 11:30, I heard the key turn in the lock. She walked in wearing a black wrap dress. Nothing crazy, but more than I'd expect for a late-night work session. Her makeup was fresh, hair done, and when I kissed her cheek, she flinched slightly, like the contact surprised her. I asked how the meeting went. She said, "What meeting?" Then blinked, caught herself, and added, "Oh, the pitch meeting, right? It went okay." Something about that hesitation stuck with me, like she was reciting a script she hadn't memorized well enough. The next day, I checked her car. Not because I was suspicious, but because I thought she might have left her gym bag in the trunk. I found a folded hotel receipt stuffed between 2 water bottles. 1 night stay, 2 guests, San Antonio. She told me she was at a seminar that weekend. With friends. When I asked her about it later, casually, she said, "Oh yeah, we all split the room, to save money." That would have made sense. If the receipt hadn't also included room service charges for steak, oysters, and a bottle of wine. For two. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But you can't unsee something once you've seen it. You can't unknow what your gut already screamed at you. And then there were the passwords. We never really had privacy rules. I mean, we didn't snoop, but we also didn't hide. We shared the same laptop for years. Same streaming accounts. She even used to ask me to read her texts out loud if her hands were full. But somewhere along the line, she started pulling the screen away when I walked behind her. She added a password to her MacBook, changed her phone lock screen, started using those disappearing messages apps. When I asked why, she said something about needing boundaries. Funny how boundaries only came into play once the lies did. One night, she told me she needed space. Just blurted it out while folding laundry. No context, no conversation. Just, "I think I need more space." When I asked what that meant, she said I was suffocating. That I was always trying to keep her boxed in. That she couldn't breathe anymore. All I'd done was ask if we could cook together that weekend. I thought maybe she was going through something. Burnout, stress, maybe something personal she didn't know how to talk about. So I gave her space. But space became silence. Silence became distance. And distance became secrets. Now, looking back, it was obvious. She didn't fall out of love overnight. She didn't just trip and fall into Michael's arms. No, this was months in the making. And I had been so focused on keeping the house together, paying bills, making sure the groceries were stocked and her car had gas. I missed all the signs that she had already checked out. Or maybe, deep down, I didn't miss them. Maybe I just chose not to see them. Because if I had seen them, if I had acknowledged them for what they really were, then I'd have to admit the truth I wasn't ready to face. Amy had already left. She just hadn't told me yet. That night in the motel, I finally cried. Not a sob, not a movie scene breakdown. Just this steady, bitter stream of tears that I didn't even feel coming until they hit my pillow. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was grief. Grief for the woman I thought I knew. Grief for the life we had built or maybe pretended to build. Grief for the version of me that believed love meant loyalty by default. The next morning, I went home. She was still at work or wherever she went these days. I walked into our bedroom and looked around. Everything was still in its place, like nothing had changed. Like the night before didn't happen. But it had. And I wasn't the same. I started opening drawers. Not rifling, just looking. Her jewelry box. Her perfume shelf. Her bedside notebook. Filled with doodles, random affirmations, and one note that read, "Remember who you were before him, before me." That line hit like a punch to the ribs. It wasn't a note of reflection. It was a declaration, a mantra. She wasn't lost. She was already gone. That evening, we sat across from each other in the kitchen. She acted like nothing was wrong. Asked if I wanted to order Thai. Told me about a new intern at work who couldn't stop quoting TikTok. I didn't bring up Michael. I didn't mention the hotel receipt. I didn't ask about the passwords or the disappearing texts or the space. I just watched her. The way someone watches a fire burn down the house they grew up in. Helpless, hollow, and already halfway through letting go. She didn't notice. Because in her mind, she'd already rewritten the story. She was the free spirit rediscovering herself. I was the past, the footnote, the furniture. And for the first time, I stopped fighting for us. Because I finally understood. I had been alone for longer than I realized. She just hadn't bothered to say goodbye. A week passed before I decided I needed proof. Not suspicions, not guesses, proof. See, when someone lies to you long enough, your mind starts splitting in two. One half keeps whispering, maybe it's all in your head. The other half screams, you already know the truth. And somewhere in between, you lose yourself, trapped between wanting to trust and needing to survive. That's where I was. Amy had been strangely upbeat lately, talking more, smiling more, acting like she'd rediscovered joy, only it wasn't the kind that came from home. It was the glow of someone who'd found something new, something secret. I knew that look. I'd seen it before, just never on her face. She came home with fresh lipstick that didn't match the shade she left with. She started wearing perfume that wasn't hers, a scent too heavy, too musky. When I asked, she said she'd switched brands. But I'd seen the old bottle still half full in the bathroom. She thought I was stupid. I thought I could outweight her. But after the rooftop party, patience felt like humiliation. And humiliation, I'd learned, has a short shelf life. So I made a plan. Amy worked at an architectural consultancy firm. Modern office, glass walls, that fake open concept that pretends to be collaborative while making sure everyone's always being watched. Everyone except the people who knew how to hide in plain sight. Michael, her boss, was one of those people. I'd seen his LinkedIn profile once. All confident smirks and corporate buzzwords. Visionary leadership, ethical innovation, team synergy. The kind of language that sounded good until you realized it meant nothing. I called the office that Tuesday, pretending to be a small business owner looking for design consultations. They directed me to the front desk, and the receptionist, polite, efficient, completely unsuspecting, booked me for a meeting with one of our senior project leads. Amy. The appointment was for Thursday morning. That morning I dressed carefully, nothing too familiar. A blue shirt, slacks, glasses I didn't need. I even used a fake name. The idea was ridiculous. Sure. But so was pretending I didn't know my wife was slipping away from me one half-truth at a time. When I walked into the office, I felt my heart pounding so hard it made my vision blur. The receptionist greeted me warmly, checked me in, and offered coffee. I declined. My hands were already shaking enough. "Ms. Warren will be with you shortly," she said. Ms. Warren. Hearing her name like that, formal, distant, made my stomach twist. She didn't recognize me right away. Why would she? She wasn't expecting me. I was just another client on her calendar. I sat in the glass conference room, watching the reflection in the far mirror, not directly at her, but through angles, shadows. That's when I saw it. A flash of movement down the hallway. Michael. He was behind her, walking fast. He caught up, leaned close, whispered something. She turned, smiling in that soft way people only do when they're trying to memorize someone's face. And then, without hesitation, he kissed her. Not a friendly peck. Not a mistake. A full, deliberate kiss, slow, certain, practiced. Her hand went to his chest. Not to push him away, but to pull him closer. When they broke apart, she said something. Couldn't hear what. He laughed. She laughed too. I didn't move. My body went cold, not from shock, but from confirmation. The kind that doesn't leave room for doubt or anger or even heartbreak. Just silence. And in that silence, I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't even surprised. I'd already known. The only difference was that now I could never unsee it. I don't remember leaving the office. I just remember walking outside into the blinding Texas sun, the kind that makes the air shimmer. I remember sitting in my car, gripping the steering wheel, and staring through the windshield without seeing anything. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. I thought I'd scream. I didn't. I just sat there, frozen in a kind of detached calm. The calm that comes when your worst fear finally stops hiding. For months, I'd been chasing ghosts, imagining shadows, trying to prove something that was already true. And now that I had proof, I didn't feel victory. I felt emptiness. The next day, I started gathering documents. Bank statements, shared accounts, mortgage papers, things she never bothered to look at but would soon realize mattered. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was clarity. Amy still acted normal that night. She made pasta, told me about a funny thing that happened at work. She laughed, and I found myself studying her like a stranger. The way she gestured with her hands, the little wrinkle near her lip when she smiled, the ease of her lies. She didn't know that I'd seen everything. She didn't know I had already decided what came next. When she finally went to bed, I stayed up, printing everything, bank statements, credit card charges, even the receipt from that San Antonio hotel. I slipped them into an envelope. Then, I opened my laptop and started drafting an anonymous email to her company's compliance department. I didn't write as a husband. I wrote as a concerned party. A whistleblower. Subject line, potential conflict of interest and misuse of company funds. I attached the receipts. The dinners billed under corporate expenses. The resort stay listed as client entertainment. All true, all verifiable. I didn't need to lie. The truth was powerful enough. When I hit send, my hand didn't shake. I didn't feel guilt, just quiet relief. The next morning, Amy was cheerful again. She kissed my cheek on her way out the door. The same lips that had been on Michael 2 days earlier. "Love you," she said casually. I looked at her and nodded. "Yeah," I said. "You too." But inside, something fundamental had shifted. The old version of me, the one who begged for honesty, who doubted himself every time she twisted the story, was gone. And what replaced him wasn't anger. It was resolve. That night, she didn't come home until nearly midnight. She said she'd been revising client drafts. I told her I understood. She smiled, thinking I meant it. When she went upstairs, I opened my email again. The company's internal audit team had already responded. They thanked me for bringing serious ethical concerns to their attention and assured me they were investigating. I closed the laptop slowly, leaned back, and exhaled. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. Because now, for once, I wasn't chasing ghosts. I was creating consequences. And soon, Amy would realize, too late, that every lie she'd built her new life on was already crumbling. 2 days after I filed the report, things started shifting. Subtly at first. Amy didn't notice it, but I could see the cracks forming. She came home that Thursday with a weird edge to her voice. Said HR had called an all-hands for her department. Something about company policy realignments and organizational review. She brushed it off as routine. I nodded, poured her a glass of wine, asked about her day like everything was fine. Inside, I was counting the hours until they connected the receipts. Until someone looked too closely at Michael's expense account. Until someone asked why a junior architect needed 2 tickets to a boutique spa retreat in the Hill Country and billed it under vendor engagement. The next morning, I forwarded an anonymous tip to their board of ethics. Just a nudge, a breadcrumb. I mentioned the dates, the San Antonio hotel, the rental cabin in Bastrop. Both on weekends Amy had claimed to be visiting her mom. I included **TS of social media posts from Michael's account. One post had a blurry wine glass, a familiar ringed hand in the background, Amy's. The caption read, "Some weekends you just recharge differently." I didn't even need to lie. Truth had enough weight if you let it sit still long enough. Friday afternoon, she came home early. Bags under her eyes, blazer wrinkled, phone in hand. "They're investigating Michael," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Someone filed a complaint. Financial misconduct or something." I played dumb. "Really?" I said. "That's serious." She nodded, clearly rattled. "They're reviewing expense reports. I don't know who reported it, but it's bad." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the rooftop bar. Her hand on his arm. Her laugh like I wasn't in the room. The San Antonio receipt. The red lipstick that wasn't for me. I watched her spiral for 3 days. On Monday, she woke up to an email from HR. Mandatory review of all recent projects she was staffed on, including her direct correspondence with Michael. That night, she didn't sleep, just stared at her laptop, typing, deleting, typing again. On Wednesday, she got the call. She was being placed on administrative leave, pending the outcome of an internal investigation. She hung up the phone with shaking hands. Didn't speak for a long time. Just stood in the kitchen, staring at the tile floor like it had answers. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were glassy. "Do you think it's fair?" she asked. "I mean, do you think I did something wrong?" And I don't know what kind of reaction she expected from me. Sympathy? A hug? One of those "you'll get through this" pep talks she used to give me when I got laid off years ago? But I wasn't that man anymore. I just shrugged. "I don't know what you've been doing at work lately," I said. "You don't really talk to me about it anymore." That landed. She blinked, like I'd slapped her without raising my hand. She tried to recover. I mean, Michael and I, yeah, we got close. But everyone's close at the office. We're a small team. It doesn't mean. I held up a hand. I didn't ask. Her mouth snapped shut. Silence. Later that night, I left an envelope on the counter. Legal letterhead. No dramatic note. Just a clean, professional document. Legal separation agreement. Not divorce. Not yet. But enough to make the message clear. The lifeline had been cut. The next morning I wasn't home. I stayed at a friend's place for the weekend. No explanation, no text. I knew she'd read the paperwork. And I knew it would rattle her more than a screaming match ever could. Amy wasn't the kind of person who feared confrontation. But she was terrified of consequences. And now, for the first time, they had teeth. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Michael had been quietly pulled from 2 major projects. His assistant was reassigned. His corporate card suspended. Whispers in the hallway. Review boards. And Amy? She wasn't answering texts. Not even from her coworkers. She'd gone radio silent. Classic damage control mode. By the time I came back home on Sunday night, she was sitting in the dark, curled on the couch with a blanket, the envelope still unopened in front of her. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "You're really doing this?" she asked quietly. "I already did." She nodded like she expected that. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I dropped my keys in the bowl near the door. "Yeah, I figured. I just wanted, I don't know, something different." "You got it." She looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time, I think she saw me not as the guy who folded laundry and filled up her gas tank, but as someone who had stepped outside the frame. A man she no longer had emotional access to. I wasn't angry. I wasn't yelling. I was gone. And she knew it. The next few days were a blur. She tried to talk, tried to explain. At one point, she even asked if we could go to couples therapy, just to make sense of everything. I told her we could revisit that idea after the company concluded its investigation. That shut the door fast. By week's end, she received her formal suspension notice. Without pay. Pending further review. Michael? Still employed, but with reduced responsibilities. Amy? Completely. Her ID badge deactivated. Her name removed from the internal Slack directory. Her desk emptied into a cardboard box delivered by a security guard. She told me that part while sobbing in the kitchen, clutching the box like it held her entire identity. "It's like I don't exist anymore," she said. I looked her dead in the eye. "Now you know how it feels." She stopped crying. Didn't say another word. And that was the moment I knew she got it. Not the details, not the paper trail, but the reality of it. She had lost everything, before she even realized she was in danger. And I hadn't raised my voice once. It's a strange thing, how fast someone can go from being the center of your life to just a person you pass in the hallway. Amy had stopped trying to fix things. Not because she gave up, but because she finally understood something she hadn't before. I wasn't playing the part anymore. I wasn't reacting to her emotions. I wasn't asking questions or chasing her attention. I wasn't even mad. I was done. But that didn't mean I was finished. While Amy spiraled through unemployment, awkward texts from old coworkers, and what I assume were humiliating conversations with Michael behind closed doors, I stayed quiet, deliberate. I kept showing up to my job. I went to the gym again, reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in months. And when I got the call from a recruiter at a private risk consultancy firm, one I had casually sent my resume to over a year ago, I didn't hesitate. Funny enough, they didn't even know about Amy. Not at first. They just needed someone with my background. Data security, systems analysis, internal audit compliance. All the boring things that keep corporations from eating themselves alive. It wasn't until I got to the final round that I found out which client they were placing me with. A regional firm. Fast-growing. Office in Austin. Heavy turnover lately due to, as the recruiter put it, a bit of internal chaos. I smiled when I heard the name. Amy's company. I didn't tell them. Why would I? This wasn't about her anymore. This was about me. I onboarded under a contractor ID. Different department. Different name badge. Just my first and middle name. Nobody flagged it. Most people assumed I was just another ghost in the machine. By the time I stepped through their doors, Michael was gone, officially resigned to pursue other opportunities. Amy's position was still listed as suspended pending review, though her email account had been deactivated. Her name was missing from all internal directories, but she was still around. Not on payroll, not in meetings, but she came in, sometimes to drop off documents, other times to clarify handovers. I don't know if it was desperation or denial, maybe both, but she was clearly hoping they'd reinstate her, that someone would take her side, that the silence wasn't final. It was. I saw her before she saw me. She was sitting outside the HR office, legs crossed, tapping her pen nervously against her notebook. Her blazer was too crisp, too carefully chosen, like she was playing dress-up in the memory of her former job. She looked smaller somehow. When she glanced up and saw me walking down the hallway, laptop in hand, ID clipped to my belt, something shifted in her face. First confusion, then realization, then fear. She stood. "Wait," she said. I stopped. She blinked. What are you doing here?" I looked at her for a moment, then down at my badge. "Working," I said. You're with them?" I nodded once. She stared at me like I was a ghost, or a threat. "I didn't know," she said, voice dropping. "They didn't tell me." "They didn't need to," I replied. "We don't overlap." She opened her mouth to say something, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked past her like she was just another ex-employee, someone who used to matter in meetings, someone whose keycard stopped working weeks ago. And in that moment, I think she understood. I wasn't the man she could lie to anymore. I was the one watching. My role was quiet, technical. I reviewed internal audit trails, combed through flagged transactions, cross-referenced data breaches and protocol failures. I wasn't looking for her, not specifically, but the systems she once used. I knew them now. The processes she helped bend? I knew those too. The more I dug, the more I realized it wasn't just an affair. It was a pattern. Dozens of irregularities. Overstated project hours. Vendor approvals pushed through under backdated forms. Bonuses awarded off inflated performance metrics. Not just Amy, but her entire little circle. Quiet, curated fraud disguised as team performance. I wasn't angry. I was methodical. I compiled reports, sent them upstream, flagged what needed to be flagged. I didn't add commentary, just facts. And those facts painted a picture the company couldn't ignore. Names were pulled. Meetings were scheduled. Terminations followed, clean, quiet, surgical. Amy tried to call me 3 times after that hallway run-in. Left voicemails. I didn't listen, just deleted them. She emailed me from a personal account. "I didn't know you'd end up in the same place. I never meant for this to affect you too." I replied with one sentence. "You never thought I'd still be standing." That was the last time we communicated. Word eventually spread. She'd been unofficially blacklisted from 3 agencies. Not because of me. I didn't push for that. I didn't need to. The documentation spoke for itself. At a business conference in Dallas, I overheard a panelist reference her case, anonymized, of course, as an example of why internal controls matter. A cautionary tale, they called it. When compliance fails due to personal compromise. I didn't smile. I just took notes. This wasn't revenge. Not really. This was reclamation. Every time Amy had laughed off my suspicions, every time she called me dramatic, paranoid, insecure, she chipped away at my sanity. Now, I was sane, stable, respected, valuable. Her? She was a case file, an unresolved variable in a system that now had guardrails because of people like her. I transferred to another department a few months later. Remote work, less company drama, more freedom. Amy faded out of public view. The last I heard, she took a temp job at a boutique agency in San Marcos. Smaller hours. No leadership role. She was starting over. The funny thing is, I wasn't rooting for her to fail. I just stopped rooting for her at all. She had her chance. She underestimated the quiet guy. The one who didn't yell, didn't fight, didn't post cryptic messages on social media. She thought that meant weak. What she didn't realize was that silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. By the time she realized who I really was, what I was capable of, it was too late. She thought the story ended when I walked out of that party. But the truth? That was just the opening scene. I transferred out of state, started over quietly, never replied to her emails. Months later, I saw her name listed in a corporate ethics case study. Anonymous to the world, obvious to me. Her glow was gone. The job offers dried up. Through a friend, I heard she was working part-time, just getting by. She had once felt untouchable. Now she just looked tired. The world didn't punish her. She did it to herself. 6 months later, I launched my own consultancy, data protection, clean systems. Nothing flashy, just honest. Someone asked what I did, and I said, I help people avoid losing what I lost. I don't feel anger anymore, just peace. Because while she smiled at her boss thinking she'd won, I had already left, with a plan, a clear heart, and my self-respect. That was the day I stopped being forgotten. That was the day I began again.